Well, we're almost all the way through the work week, and it's time to take a look at the Ohio State offense versus the Michigan State defense as we get things set for the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Michigan State Spartans on Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. kickoff in East Lansing.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Buckeye Breakdown podcast. Anthony Moeglin here with you, alongside Kevin Woidke. And tonight, we're talking Ohio State offense versus the Michigan State defense. Now, one of the things we saw last week for Ohio State was a welcome sight, Kevin. As the team kind of struggled through the first half, it was partially due to a sluggish start, but also it was partially due to the big play. Ohio State's offense really exploded on last Saturday against Marshall for a number of huge touchdowns, one for 40 yards, one for 56, one for 68, and one big one for 86 when Quinshon Judkins took a carry over the left side and broke everything to the house. So it was something that was a sight for sore eyes. Not that we couldn't do it, but it was nice to see it. A handful of different guys get their hand in the action and have a couple different big plays across the field. Kevin, how do we feel going into a game this Saturday against Michigan State, where the offense seems to be in good rhythm, especially with the second half that they played against Marshall, but looking to still steadily improve as we get into Big Ten play?
Absolutely. And I mean, this is going to be their first test as an offense. I mean, the first few games really haven't been. And it's nice to see that they're humming going into this, because it would have been really tough for both their ego and Ohio State's ego as a whole if they rolled into this without kind of being on a roll, because like I said, this is a tough defense. I mean, they're top 25 in the country, I believe. I'm not sure their exact number, but they are really talented. I mean, both in the back seven and the front four. So it should be a really fun game.
Yeah, it absolutely should be. And this is one's going to be interesting because while this is Ohio State's best test on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be Michigan State's best test when facing an offense like Ohio State. And obviously, Ohio State is going to be everyone's best test for the most part. But for Michigan State, their opponents to this point, FAU, Maryland, Prairie View A&M, and Boston College. Yes, they've dominated all four of those teams, giving up a max of 24 points in a win to Maryland. And it's really showed. Statistically speaking, Kevin, you touched on it, but they are ranked. They're the 14th ranked defense in all of college football in terms of yards per game, giving up just north of 250. You got 254.8. For comparison's sake, Ohio State is ranked second on that list, where they give up about 180 yards a game. So you can kind of get a visual difference comparing number to number there of what this Michigan State team is. And one of the things that's really interesting about Michigan State is they always, it's always a weird game when you go up to East Lansing. They got a weird feel. I don't know what it is, but anytime you go into that smaller stadium, you're playing on the grass. I don't know if they grow the grass out. If it were me, it'd be knee high come Saturday morning, but always kind of a weird feeling. And for Ohio State, they get an evening kick, 7:30 kickoff on Saturday night after a long trip to East Lansing. So starting fast is one thing that's going to be on my mind as the Buckeyes take the ball, on Saturday night. But continuing to build that positive momentum that they've shown throughout these first three games and getting into this Big Ten play, I think is going to play a huge role in what we see not only on Saturday as that game progresses, but in this massive 3-game stretch where they go Michigan State, Iowa, Oregon, all back-to-back before another bye week. But I think, Kevin, for me, one of the big themes on Saturday is going to be continuing to just improve as an offense here.
And yeah, that's a good point. I think that, I mean, in my time when we'd always play Michigan State, it was usually in Columbus in September and then in East Lansing in November. So pretty nice for those guys to get to go up there for a night game in September instead of when I played up there, and it was the only time Coach Stubb let us wear sleeves because it was 4 degrees before the wind chill. It's just a tough game. It always is. It's a weird environment. The locker room's weird. It's old. It smells moldy. It's an interesting place to play. It's grass, which is going to make the guys feel great on Sunday, but it's definitely going to be something they get used to. I mean, they play on grass. They practice on grass all week, and they are probably going to do Perfect Thursday on grass today to get ready, because usually Perfect Thursdays are for you move to the turf field to get ready for turf. But it's just it's a different thing. It's similar to Northwestern, except it's not like you're playing at a high school stadium in terms of the feel of the ground and the feel of the locker room. But like I said on Tuesday, it's not an easy. They're never an easy. It's kind of like playing that rival high school. Like they could win 2 games the entire year, but they show up for that one game and it doesn't make any sense. And it's against us. It's against Team Up North, and then sometimes against Penn State. But
it's one of those games where you just kind of throw the record books out, and it sounds like you have some really fond memories of going up to East Lansing.
Oh yeah, just
from those descriptions there. But Kevin, you said something there that I want to kind of have you unpack a little bit. I know every team's last day of the work week has a different name to it. Yours at Ohio State called Perfect Thursday. What does a perfect Thursday look like? What does it feel like? What's the environment? What's the feel as the team kind of puts the hay in the barn and closes that door and puts a bow on the end of their week of preparation?
Absolutely. So you're looking at perfect Thursday. It's ingrained in my head. Perfect Thursday, no drop balls, no callbacks. Meaning you have the plays scripted. It's all against the scout team. You're not going against the ones versus ones, twos versus twos, even ones versus twos. It's ones versus scout team, and you're going through everything. You're doing offensively. You're doing every scenario. You're doing 2-minute. You're doing short yardage. You're doing, 3rd and 12. And it's, again, sometime in the first scripted drive's against air, then transitions into, you got some live bodies out there. But, it's about building confidence. That's just what it is. So if you got a 50-50 ball and you're on the scout team, you're gator arming it and you're letting the other guy make the play. I always loved the hook and ladder we practiced. At least that's what we used to do with Coach Fickle. It's the only time I felt like an athlete hold the ball. But it was I love Perfect Thursdays. In and out, low impact on the body. But it was really about honing in the technique, honing in the plays, really learning it and getting ready for Saturday.
Yeah, you got to give yourself more credit. You're a hell of an athlete there, dude. But one of the things that always stuck in my mind was 2-minute drill. You always executed the 2-minute drill, and it was for when I played. And obviously, a similar scenario. We were in shells. It was a fast tempo practice. You had your scripts done. You had the first 10 done. You had everything like that. Everybody was studied up, and again, it was all about efficiency. But at the end of practice, we would do a one-on-one, ones-on-ones. One defense versus one offense, 2-minute drill. Two offense versus 2 defense, 2-minute drill. And truthfully, it was the end of the week. That was the last competition period we would do on a Thursday. And it was always high energy. I remember when I played, I was going against the best defense in the country every day. And it was really hard. I lost a lot of sleep thinking about those 2-minute drills on Thursdays, but I digress here. Let's talk a little Michigan State. Now that, like I said, this defense is solid. They haven't played anybody, but they are solid up front. I shouldn't say up front. Their leading tackler and leading producer on this Michigan State defense, Jordan Turner. He's going to be playing linebacker, but he leads the team with 22 sacks would be something special through 4 weeks. 22 tackles, 3 sacks, and he's tied at the top there with Chris Bogle, who's going to be on the defensive line. He himself has 19 total tackles, which is pretty impressive coming from having your hand in the dirt, but he's tied with Turner with 3 sacks. So one of the things that keeps kind of popping up for us when we do our film breakdowns on Sundays, Kevin, is how the offensive line has steadily improved. I truth be told, I've been pretty impressed by the growth that they've shown, and it hasn't been crazy, but as they've started to gel and come together as a group, it's really starting to show evidence, and they're doing, I think, a really nice job. And Saturday, between Turner and Bogle, they're going to have their hands full, kind of keeping Will Howard clean, standing behind him.
Yeah, they will. It's not going to be easy. I mean, you're playing big time guys. I mean, these aren't these aren't guys who, had a really good senior year and got an offer to go play at Marshall or something like that. These are guys that are heavily recruited since sophomores, juniors in high school, whether it be from Michigan. They're heavy Ohio recruiting. Michigan State always had. They got some guys, they used to be kind of regional. They've gone national a little bit. They got some guys from Florida, California, Texas, all over. They're really trying to build out that program. It'll be a tough sledding. I mean, we talked about it. They haven't really played anybody, but I mean, there's some teams that are above them. Truth be told, we haven't really played anybody. There's some teams below them that have played worse teams, and it's just that are in the eyes of the nation better, but they've played a worse schedule. It's just a matter of, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. And the offensive line is really going to have to be, on full tilt, ready to go.
No question about it. And not only that, it's something that I kind of thought about doing another show here was like, hey, when the difference between week 2 and week 1 for this Ohio State offense was pretty drastic, right? You go into that Akron game and they kind of come out sluggish. Sluggish isn't the right word, but just kind of felt like a week 1 game. They were kind of playing with their food a little bit, especially in the first half. And then they kind of came out, rolled in the second half, took care of Akron. And then the difference between that offense and the offense in week 2 when they came out against Western Michigan was like night and day isn't even the right way to describe it because it was just total pure domination. And they came out right from the first drive, right down the field, scored. Then they just didn't ever take their foot off the gas. The same can be said about their game against Marshall. You come off the bye week, look a little sluggish early. Yes, Will Howard had nice stats, but I think they could have been a little bit more explosive on the offensive side of the football. Could we see a Western Michigan type performance on Saturday? I hope so, because I think that there's a lot of room to improve from that Marshall game. And I think, not from a points perspective, but more from an efficiency perspective, right? We're going to have to put drives together. You're not going to have 4 explosive or I guess massive home run touchdowns that they had against Marshall. You're going to have to put drives together, sustain those drives, maybe get a couple tough third downs, which they haven't had to do in a while. So it's going to be a really nice test for this Ohio State offense. And one guy to keep your eye on the back end when Ohio State does draw back the pass is Chris Brantley. This defensive back, he wears number 0, and he's one of their better guys. So far in the year, he's got 12 tackles, which you don't ever love to see that out of a corner if he's up there towards the top in tackles. That means he's given up a lot of catches, but he's still doing a pretty good job in coverage. He's got 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. 1 he returned for a touchdown, and he did it in the biggest way possible. A 100-yard pick 6 against Texas A&M. Excuse me. Yeah. What is it? Prairie View A&M, not Texas A&M, Prairie View A&M. But yeah, Brantley on the back end is going to make it challenging. There's a few other guys back there that are going to make Ohio State's wide receivers be really on their P's and Q's on Saturday.
100%. And, one of those guys back there being, Angelo Groves, Ohio-bred kid, like runner-up Mr. Football, number 1 cornerback for Ohio in 2020, number 26 in the country. I mean, he's got 19 tackles, so he's not afraid to throw his head in there. I don't know if that's from giving up catches or not, but he's also got an interception. He's got 1 PBU, and then he's got a forced fumble too, which you don't see that a lot from a DB. And I think it just shows he makes the most of opportunities. If you're going to catch the ball on him, he's going to make you pay. And that's one example of it. He's from Mansfield, Ohio originally, but I think he's a hardworking kid. He was the 26th, like I said, 26th corner in the country. And that means that he wasn't bad in any capacity coming out of high school, and he's a 5th-year senior. So he's been around the block a few times. His first year was 2019 against Ohio State.
It always feels like Michigan State has a veteran group of guys. Like, we got a lot of guys who stick around, and I don't know if that's a double-edged sword, right? It's good in college having a couple guys that are veteran. That also would mean they weren't good enough to go pro, but nonetheless, that still is important, especially in games like this where, by now Ohio State's veteran guys, some of their new guys are well more acclimated to being Ohio State Buckeye than they were maybe a couple weeks ago, but still veteran group on the other side of the football in Michigan State. And one of the areas I want to kind of take a quick peek at here is kind of what they did to Maryland last week. Maryland was their toughest opponent to this point. Boston College. Boston College was their toughest opponent to this point, and they went up to Boston and ended up losing that football game 23-19. But it was really a weird game. It was a lot of it was turnover driven. And we saw, if you go back a couple weeks ago when Boston College played Florida State, they had a great offense. Their offense was moving. Their quarterback is kind of a dual threat cat who can throw it, he can run it. But when they played Michigan State, only threw for 140 yards, and their high rusher on the day was a 102-yard rusher. So yes, that's a big number in and of itself. But I think Michigan State really bottled up what is a pretty solid offense. They got to kind of be feeling good, having a little bit of confidence from that side of the football. They end up losing the game thanks to turnovers from their offense. But on that side of the football, they're starting to build some confidence with 3 or 4 really good games back to back to back.
Yeah, they, like I said, no, they're talented up front. They're talented. They have a talented defensive line. They get off blocks pretty well. It's going to be, you're going to have to keep your hands inside and get movement. It's going to be initial push, and it's going to be up to the running backs to break some arm tackles because they hunt that ball down, and they're not afraid to throw their nose in there and hit people and do everything to make sure that they stifle that run. I mean, they haven't seen a running game like ours in terms of the running backs and the offensive line. I think as the game went on, it was pretty evident that Donovan was starting to get into his rhythm, but then Double T went out and Austin stepped in. But I think it'll be a really good test for our offense, especially in the run game. I think that they're going to have to play soft in the pass game with our receivers as good as they are. I think you can see a bunch of play action early to kind of keep those guys off the line of scrimmage and then open up the run game after that. But that's just what I'm assuming will happen, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm putting you on the spot here. We didn't talk about this, and I'm taking a crutch away from you. Outside of the tight end room, who or what are you most excited to see? It doesn't necessarily have to be a player. I have one in mind that I'm excited to see, but I'll start with you. What on Saturday from the Ohio State offense, outside of tight ends, outside of your boy G. Scott, are you excited to see? I should say the second most excited you are for what? What is that?
Absolutely. I'm excited to see how they utilize the Y position. No. I got excited looking at the 2 running back set last week, and I'm hoping they utilize that more. I mean, it's got to be tough to be a linebacker looking at both those guys in the backfield and be like, what? They can do so much out of this. You could even do a handoff and then run a speed option off that handoff if you wanted to with these 2. Like it's unbelievable the versatility you have in that backfield. And you have Will Howard, Travion Henderson, and Quinton Judkins all back there lined up to start the play. I'm really excited. I think they got into a wing tee at one point.
They did, yeah.
Which was, I'm like, that got me so excited just watching that.
And that's what I'm really looking forward to, Kevin. Every week we've seen something new come into this into the Ohio State offense, and now you don't have to hold back anymore. You're trying to kind of play behind the curtain and not let everybody in the country know what you're doing, what this new Chip Kelly offense is going to look like. I think we're going to start to see some of the new stuff, and that is where I'm most looking forward to seeing. Last week we saw the evolution of that 3-man superpower thing they're calling it, where they got 3 pullers into a hole and they have a couple play action moves, or counter moves off of it, that fake pitch back to the counter. I'm really curious to see how Chip Kelly continues to evolve this Ohio State offense, particularly in the run game, because like you said, this run game has the ability to be just absolutely incredible with those 2 horses back there, and the offensive line is doing well enough that they can continue to challenge themselves with new scheme, new stuff. So I'm excited to see what Chip Kelly has there. As a bonus one, I'm also looking forward to seeing what Will Howard looks like. He's going to have some pressure situations. There's been, to this point, he's played really solid, but he's had 0 pressure scenarios and big time moments. What's he going to look like if it's Saturday night and it's a close game getting close to halftime and Ohio State has a 3rd and 8? What's his response going to be? And there's certainly going to be scenarios like that. So I'm excited to see how he handles those. And one more, it can be a long-winded, but one more. I want to see him take deep shots, man. Let's open this thing up. These guys can run down the field. Give them a chance down the field. Well, we thank you for jumping in with us, Kevin and myself. We love doing these shows and getting you set for what should be a great weekend out in East Lansing as Ohio State kicks off their Big Ten schedule against Michigan State, 7:30 on Saturday night. For all your news, highlights, analysis, and more, please subscribe to our channel, Ohio State Buckeyes on SI. For all of our written content, head over to our website, si.com/college/Ohio State for all things Buckeyes, wall-to-wall coverage. And we got the best coverage for you here on our channels here. So as we get you set for Ohio State versus Michigan State on Saturday night, we thank you for joining us on this episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast.